These say a nation's soul isn't found in its monuments or its textbooks, but in its kitchens. That the real stories aren't written in ink, but simmered in pots, passed down through generations on a current of steam and spice. Today, we are diving deep into one of the world's great culinary epics, the incredible story of Malaysia, told one delicious plate at a time. So here's the big question we're exploring. How do you actually read a nation's past? Not through its statues, but through its meals. How can you taste the echoes of ancient trade routes, of colonial ambitions, and the mingling of countless peoples in a single bite? Well, let's find out. Okay, so our story begins long, long before the rise of sultans or the arrival of empires. We have to start with the land itself, this lush green peninsula just bursting with life, and the people who first unlocked its deepest secrets. The foundation, the absolute bedrock of all Malaysian flavor, comes from the Indigenous Orang Asli. Now, their relationship with the rainforest wasn't just about surviving. It was a deep, intricate library of knowledge about wild plants, herbs, and roots that could be used for both food and medicine. And what's really fascinating here is how this knowledge was kept alive. It was treated like a sacred trust, often held and passed down by the elder women in the community. They were literally living encyclopedias of culinary heritage. They understood staples like cassava, which, is sometimes dismissed as a simple crop, but is actually this nutrient-rich powerhouse that sustained their communities for centuries. And because of all this natural bounty, the peninsula didn't stay a secret for very long. Its location was just too good. It became a magnet. Early kingdoms popped up along the coast, becoming these critical ports in the spice trade. And by the 15th century, the Melaka Sultanate was one of the most important trading hubs on the planet, a buzzing, cosmopolitan center where cultures and flavors first started their long, delicious conversation. And this is where the story really starts to heat up. The arrival of new traders and colonizers turned the Malay Peninsula into a crucible, a true melting pot where waves of new people brought not just their hopes for a new life, but their ingredients, their cooking techniques, and their own deeply held beliefs about food. So let's break down these pillars of flavor that started to arrive. First, you have the Malay culinary world, which is deeply connected to local resources and guided by Islamic principles of halal and achieving harmony. Then came the Chinese, with their philosophy of balancing grains and meats, and they brought staples we all know, like soy sauce and noodles. And from India, a whole new world. Ayurvedic principles and these incredibly complex spice blends that would change the local palate forever. And we're not talking about a slow trickle here. In the 19th century, the British Empire needed a ton of labor for its tin mines and rubber plantations. This sparked a massive wave of migration from southern China and India. And this moment didn't just change the face of the nation, it fundamentally and permanently revolutionized its kitchen. So, what happens when all these people, with all their distinct food traditions, start living and eating right next to each other? You get fusion. And I'm not talking about some trendy marketing term. This was an organic, everyday process of survival, adaptation, and just brilliant creativity. A completely new palette was being forged. And the first great example of this? Peranakan, or Baba Nyonya cuisine. This is the beautiful result of Chinese traders marrying local Malay women centuries ago. What came out of it was a totally unique culinary language. You had Chinese techniques, like using a wok, meeting Malay ingredients like lemongrass, galangal, and coconut milk. It was the original East meets Southeast Asia fusion, long before that was a thing. And this spirit of blending wasn't some exception to the rule. It quickly became the rule. In kitchens all across the country, Chinese soy sauce started sharing shelf space with Malay sambal. Indian spices were being used to season Chinese noodles. This wasn't confusion. It was the birth of Malaysian food as we know it today. But here's the thing. This history isn't some abstract concept. It's edible. It lives on in these iconic dishes that are basically legends served on a plate. Each and every one tells a chapter of the nation's story. Okay, let's take Nasi lemak, the unofficial national dish. There's this charming folktale about a girl who accidentally spilled coconut milk into a pot of cooking rice. When her mom asked what she'd made, she just replied, Nasi lema, which means, it's rice, mother. But beyond the cute myth, it has really practical roots. That combination of coconut-infused rice, spicy sambal, and salty anchovies was the perfect, long-lasting fuel for farmers working in the fields all day. Or just look at laksa. It's a perfect tale of two soups. The Penang Assam laksa is tangy and fish-based. It's a clear product of that Peranakan culture, blending Malay herbs with Chinese ingredients. Then you've got curry laksa, which is rich, creamy, and its soul is clearly rooted in the coconut milk and complex spice blends of South Indian cooking. It's one name, but two completely different histories in a bowl. In short, laksa is just the ultimate story of cultures colliding in the best way imaginable. It's a dish that's so beloved, so personal, that family recipes for the spice paste, the rampa, are often guarded more closely than state secrets. Seriously. But, when food is so deeply tied to your identity, it can also become, well, a battleground. This is where the story gets spicy in a whole different way. We're getting into the world of culinary nationalism and those fiery debates over who owns a dish. And nothing, I mean nothing, captures this better than the infamous Rendang Geets. So back in 2018, on MasterChef UK, the judges criticized a Malaysian contestant's chicken rendang because the skin wasn't crispy. The backlash from Southeast Asia was immediate and fierce, and it all culminated in this legendary comeback from the Prime Minister. The point being, rendang is slow-cooked for hours. It's never supposed to be crispy. This whole mess brings up a really fascinating question, right? Who gets to define a recipe? Who owns authenticity? The rendang thing was so interesting because, for a moment, it actually united Malaysians and Indonesians, who often bicker over the origins of rendang, against a common outside misunderstanding of their shared food heritage. And there's another really important layer to all these politics, the idea of halal and haram. In Malaysia, this is way more than just a set of dietary rules for Muslims. It's a really powerful social and political force that shapes where people can eat together, it reinforces cultural identity, and it reflects the central role of Islam in the nation. So, where does this epic story go from here? Well, the legend of Malaysian food is far from over. Today, a whole new generation is finding amazing ways to honor this incredible past while writing a bold new future. You've got chefs like Darren Toe, who are part of this movement that's basically deconstructing the very idea of Malaysian food. He's going right back to the beginning, focusing on terroir, which is the idea that the local land and climate give ingredients a unique flavor. He's celebrating indigenous ingredients, exploring the wild bounty that the Orang Asli first understood. He's not just cooking, he's doing culinary archaeology. And that's the beauty of it all. The legend is constantly being rewritten. It's happening in those fine dining restaurants that are reimagining the nation's palate, for sure. But it's also happening every single night in thousands of hawker stalls where an uncle is perfecting his family's laksa recipe. The story just keeps unfolding in every single shared meal. Because in the end, the map of Malaysia isn't just a bunch of lines on paper. It's a map of flavors. It's a geography of taste. And understanding that map, well, that is power. It's the power to understand how a nation was truly built, not just by treaties and battles, but by the simple, profound, and delicious act of sharing a meal.